Yeah, I think he was more hopeful. You're right. I think he was more hopeful that we would still have millions of people running nodes and running miners, and we don't have that today. And I think that is unfortunate. I call those people rabbits, and they're very important. I hope that there is a proliferation of devices that is accessible to that crew. I think what people or organizations like BitAxe and FutureBit and some of those sort of things are doing is important.
Mm-hmm. You're referring to those small little home lottery miners that you can plug in.
Correct. Now, I think that infrastructure is still too immature. They're still difficult to use. There's a lot of issues with them, but their heart's in the right place and going the right way. I want to see them be successful. But what we need is an entire ecosystem that will support them. And, for instance, I'm involved with the design of our own ASIC, meaning the chip. And there are several others. And I think that's very important, that we have to see Bitmain and MicroBT be a significantly smaller percentage of the global hardware of the network.
I totally agree with that.
We need, and then we need the ability for development of a chip. We're doing a project, when all said and done, this project, if we make it, and there's a lot of hurdles to still get through, we will probably have deployed at least $60 or $70 million before we get to market.
That's a big capital outlay up front.
And so, the number of organizations that can get there is limited by, that capital investment. Now, Block's doing it. Yeah. Blockstream is doing it. There's a group called Chain Reaction doing it. Our group's called M5ers. We're going to try to do it. And by the way, I hope we all make it.
Yeah, that would be great for the market.
That would be, great for the market. There's room for all of us. And what we, and like in our case, and I think in the case of a couple others, we will open up those chips to people who want to design systems. So those are two completely different skill sets. I actually come from the system design background, right? And so giving the BitAxes of the world who maybe want to design they want to design a 100-watt device that can plug into a wall and help people, that's wonderful. But, if you want to build heaters for spas, you want to build blanket warmers, pet. You want to have a pet bed that has a warmer in it. The possibilities are limitless, but we have to give the tools to those people. And if they can't get access to chips, because I met in Nashville with Scott from BitAxe, and they're basically dependent on recycling chips off of
S9s or whatever.
S9s or S19s. And when you start talking about desoldering boards to get at a used chip and reapplying it to another chip, and the data sheets of the chips themselves aren't even published. You have to re-engineer the whole thing.
I'm going to take you in my R&D lab. Show you what we're working on.
It's great stuff, but
you're one of the few people who can appreciate it.
Yeah, but we're talking about a limited number of the people in the world that have the skill sets, the capability, and
micro solder and do these types of things.
And
no doubt.
And so
read the electrical schematic charts and
it's just not scalable, right? People that do it in the short term, there's a great opportunity. God bless you. I support you. But it'd be a hell of a lot easier. Like when I went out back in my days, we'd buy from Intel or AMD or Cyrex or Chips and Technologies, and we'd have a sales rep and a technical support representative, and they'd walk in with a data book and they tell you, here's what every pin does. Here are the tolerances. These are the operating conditions. If there's a firmware update, you get access to it. If there's a different version of the chip, and we had all that information, and until we have that maturity, we don't really have that infrastructure to support all that. And so the reason we're talking on this a bit of a rabbit hole, though, is that portion of the market creates the greatest amount of immunity and the greatest decentralization of the network. Because we're on a path right now where the biggest hashers in the world are really just that. They are hashers. They are hired guns that are renting their hash rate to pools. The pools are the real miners. From the perspective of the Bitcoin network, basically only the pools are the miners, meaning the pools have nodes that connect to the network. The mempool of the pool determines what transactions will go in the templates used by the hashers, and the pool makes all the decisions about those templates. Mm-hmm. I know that's probably a big mouthful there, but
there's a couple different rabbit holes we could go down from here. But real quick for the listeners, a mempool is basically all the transactions that haven't been put into a block yet, and they're just kind of sitting there. And different, block producers can have different mempools essentially too.
Correct. Every node has its own mempool. Yeah, exactly. It's not a centralized repository.
Similar, but
they in general are communicating. Yeah. Each node is in general communicating. Hey, I have these transactions, and it'll tell the nodes it's connected to that. Mm-hmm. If it has a new transaction that should be considered.
Yeah.
But each node is not required to do that. It does not have to broadcast new transactions to others. So, and there can be latencies and things that delay it. So in general, there's 200,000 transactions in what we'll call the mempool, but in reality, that's a common set of transactions that exists. And there may be, for instance, Mara has an accelerator service, and as does Luxor. And those transactions that go into those accelerators typically are not broadcast to the rest of the network. Yeah. So, and they'll have side arrangements with pools and block producers to try to get those transactions into blocks.
That's just a whole nother potential market that's just kind of like an off chain here. So there's just...
Correct.
It's very interesting to see this ecosystem evolve and change over time.
Yeah.
So I had Mark here. We talked a lot about ocean mining maybe a week or two ago, but now that you're here, tell us why ocean mining is important. You're heavily involved with them. What's going on?
Yeah. So thanks for asking. And I just, from a case of full disclosure, so everybody knows, I'm on the board of directors at Ocean, and I have an investment through my fund in Ocean. So I do my best to be unbiased, but I don't want anybody to think I'm to the degree people think I'm cheerleading for Ocean. I do want to be transparent that I have.
Well, you are, because you believe in what they're trying to do here. Let's unpack it.
And so first, there are about 15. If we look at the last couple weeks, we'll probably see about 15 pools that have mined a block. Some might have mined one or two, and some may have mined several hundred or 1,000 even in that period. Of those 15 pools, you'll see about 90% of the blocks came from 6 companies. See if I can get them all. Foundry, Antpool, Luxor, F2 Pool, and via BTC. I might have missed one. Anyway, so those pools, about 90% of them will come from those 6 companies. Foundry, which has about 30% of the world's about 30% of the world's blocks, is a pretty independent organization. That's the good news. It's a US-based organization. It's a KYC pool. So participation in the pool is permissioned, meaning you can't just join it.
That's a wild thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, to me as someone who's been in the space for a long time, like, that thought kind of disgusts me.
Yeah. And they were the kings of something called FPPS. So they came out of nowhere just 3.5 years ago, from nothing to being dominant. They did so by I think, promoting something called FPPS, full pay per share pools. And the concept was going to miners and saying, hey, instead of using this traditional model, which says you get paid when the pool wins a block, we'll pay you every single block, whether we win or we lose. So
smooths that variance out for the miner.
Right. And in simple terms, if Foundry is 30% of the world's hash rate, we'll pay you 30% of every single block that gets won. Not exactly the formula, but just for the moment, we'll place all that. So it's highly appealing, especially because some miners have cost structures that have very short windows of payment. Some actually have to pay on a daily basis, have to pay their energy bill on a daily basis. Yeah, I haven't ever run into that, but it exists. Okay. So highly appealing, because if they were, for instance, attached to a pool that had a small amount of hash rate and was paying only when they won a block, if they're getting paid every 10 days, well, that's a pretty bad mismatch. So FPPS was highly appealing to them. Antpool, which is the second biggest, which is a Bitmain run pool, copied that, and also got a lot of traction.